Welcome to the channel PK 2023. Hope everyone has a good time watching our videos.
Manchester United rue Luke Shaw's mad handball and last gasp defeat at Brighton. Are Manchester United a force reborn? That seems to have been the feeling around the club for much of this season, but it will be hard for rival teams to take them too seriously until they learn to survive nights like this, against tricky opponents, away from the familiar comforts of Old Trafford. There was no trepidation from Brighton in this meeting with Erik ten Hag's side, and no sense that a so-called smaller team was playing against a so-called footballing giant. Instead, it was United's players who seemed to have fear in their eyes. Especially at the end, when Brighton swarmed around them and 1 point suddenly became none. The big picture concern is that this grueling loss, secured by Alexis Mac Allister's 99th minute penalty, was simply the latest in a long line of unhappy away matches for United against adventurous opponents. In 8 away fixtures against teams currently in the top 9 of the Premier League, they have taken only 1 point. The other, more immediate concern is what this defeat, their third in a row to Brighton in the league, might mean for their position in the table. Liverpool are looming in the race for the top 4 and, although United have a 4-point lead with 1 game in hand, they must now be looking over their shoulders. This is a time to tread very carefully indeed, especially with Jurgen Klopp's side on a 5-match winning run. United, Liverpool and everyone else in contention for the Champions League places must be grateful that this season ends so soon, because Brighton are on the charge and there seems to be no stopping them right now. With more time and more games, Roberto De Zerbi's team would surely back themselves to finish in the top 4. There are certainly not 4 better sides in the league than the Brighton team of spring 2023. When Ten Hag digests this match, he will identify so many of the same issues that have plagued his team's progress this season. There was the needless hot-headedness of Antony, whose petulance only served to further excite the home crowd, and another foolish error at the back, where Luke Shaw handled the ball in the final minute of stoppage time. Even in attack, there was the familiar inability to convert chances. United were never the better team on the night, but they did have the better opportunities in the first half. Antony, Marcus Rashford, Anthony Martial and Bruno Fernandes all wasted clear openings, before Brighton seized control of the night after the break. Would a top-class centre-forward have made the difference here? It was hard not to imagine what might have happened if one of those chances had fallen to the feet of, say, Harry Kane, instead of Martial or Antony. "The problem is we don't score," said Shaw. "We had 3 or 4 big chances we should be scoring in the first half. We have had a lot of that this season, but then again it comes back to my error which cost us the game. What I did is disappointing, and I lost us a point at the end, but if you look at the first half we can be 3-0 up." Ten Hag, of course, can only work with what he has got. But his critics will rightly point at De Zerbi's work, on a much smaller budget and with much cheaper players, and say that more is possible from this group of players. Brighton's midfield consisted of Mac Allister and Billy Gilmour, against Casemiro and Fred, and they dominated this game for much of the night. Mac Allister, especially, played with a swagger and class that was beyond his opponents in red. In the second half, Casemiro and Antony decided that the only way to disrupt the Argentina midfielder was to kick him, and both could have been sent off. It is little wonder that the biggest Premier League sides, including United, are showing strong interest in Mac Allister. He seems to think quicker than anybody else on the pitch, and his late penalty was converted with a nerveless cool. United embody the established order that Brighton hope one day to disrupt, and there is a feeling among the fans on the South Coast that anything might be doable with De Zerbi in their dugout. Within the squad, too, there is a sense that this is a club with the potential to overthrow the big boys not just in the long term, but in the near future. A measure of Brighton's growth as a team this season is that they feel genuinely irritated by their recent FA Cup semi-final defeat by United. They lost on penalties and De Zerbi has said publicly that he feels his side deserved better for their showing on the day. This was therefore revenge of sorts for Brighton, who have overtaken Tottenham Hotspur to move into 6th place, despite playing 2 games fewer than Spurs, and look destined to qualify for European competition for the first time in their history. United could not match their energy or inventiveness all over the pitch, despite their early chances. By the end they were clinging on to a point with desperation on their faces, as blue and white shirts ran all over them. Kaoru Mitoma, Solly March and McAllister all went close before a corner came in and Shaw raised his arm to the ball. Why did he do it? He could not explain. That is pressure for you. Brighton were attacking in waves and United's resistance was ultimately broken. After the goal, Ten Hag stood with his hands in his pockets, unsure of what to do or say, as his players scratched their heads and wondered what had happened.
Thank you for watching our video. Please subscribe channel, comment and sharing our videos.